Hey guys, Brandon Storl here with Pebble Creek Outdoors, and welcome to another trapping video. Today's video we're going to cover trapping in urban areas and areas that are close to people, residential areas, and also around livestock and other household pets or anything like that. We're going to cover a few things on some stuff that I do with my trapping program, and maybe hopefully it'll help you guys out, and maybe we can engage a little bit of conversation and see what you guys do for trapping close to residential areas or being around non-target species. So first off, whenever you guys are trapping, doing anything, make sure you follow your local state guidelines, and also this opens up a whole nother can of worms. Make sure you follow your local city guidelines, because we're going to be talking about trapping in areas that are close to, or within city limits. So, just to kind of go off of my own experience with this, I've had a lot of success over the years trapping close to residential areas, businesses, and just general areas. Pretty much anywhere you go, I live in the Midwest, you're going to have a house here and there. I do have a lot of areas that I trap that I'm far away from, houses and people, but there's always pets, there's always dogs running around, there's always non-target species out there, and it's just something you have to deal with. So, I guess I'd start out by saying there's a difference between, and I don't call it ethical or unethical trapping, because I think all forms of trapping nowadays in the modern age are all ethical. But there's legal trapping, and there's smart trapping. And a legal trapper, without any kind of common sense, will just take the law as for what it is, black and white, and which is good to a certain extent, but it can also hurt you, and it can hurt the trapping industry. So just because it's legal to go out and set a foothold or bridge number 3 for a coyote, maybe right outside of a town or along somewhere where there's animals, a lot of dogs or non-target species, just because it may be legal doesn't mean that it's a good idea. And legally you may catch a dog, because dogs are canines, and they are drawn into canine sets. If you set a set for a coyote, it's not specifically geared for a dog, but there's a lot of instinct in a dog that is very similar to a coyote or a wolf or anything like that. And so to run dirt hole sets or blind sets or anything, if you set them around a lot of dogs, chances are at some point in time you may end up catching a dog. So you just have to be aware of that, and you have to be smart. And so there's just certain things that are a good idea and some things that aren't. So you kind of have to change your trapping methods and your how you do things. You have to kind of change things up to where you are in each specific location, and that's what makes trappers so a breed above the rest, because we have to think about a lot of different things. Not only how to outsmart animals, but also what I'm doing going to reflect negatively on the trapping community, because we have a lot of antis out there, probably more than a lot of other hunters and outdoorsmen out there for sure. So I'll talk a little bit about the equipment here. So you guys see I have some traps set up. So when I'm trapping in urban areas or close to other non-target species, I pretty much stay away from body grips, and I stay away from any kind of foothold trap, just for the main reason that when you catch the animal, you don't really have as much control. If I run a dirt hole set, there's a good chance I'm going to catch something that I may not want to catch in there, non-target. So I typically kind of stay away from that, and if I don't, I make sure that I'm setting it in water, or if I'm doing a pocket set or something like that. You could do pocket sets all day long up and down a creek line outside of a residential area. You're not going to catch any cats or dogs or anything, because they're not going to be in the water. Those coons will, more so. one of the best pieces of equipment that has just completely changed like the urban trapper's game is going to be the dog proof trap. And I know I've kind of gone over a lot of these in the past. I have two different kinds of dog proofs here, and it really doesn't matter which kind you have as long as it works. Right here in my right hand I have No BS Lures dog proof. I've started testing these, gosh, it was probably 2-3 years ago, and they're really good. They've got a nice rubber piece that comes inside here. Unfortunately, this one actually had gotten taken out by a coon, so I have to put a new one in there. But they do catch, they hold, and from what I understand, they're 100% American product, which is pretty cool. And I got your crunch proof swivel in the middle. Pretty good setup. I've caught pretty good amount of coons with them. This one here is a Z-Trap. The difference between this one and the No BS Lures is that this has a two-way trigger. So when you set it, and they're pretty easy to set, when you put them on here, they'll trigger if the animal pulls the trigger out or pushes in. So you kind of have, for some of them finicky coons out there, you might have a little better chance of catching them. I've heard good and bad on both of them. I've caught coons on both of them. This one here has got a ton of bite marks on it because it's caught its fair share. These are about $10 a piece, and they go, or $10, starting about $10, and they go up from there. Z-Traps are going to cost you $13. Dukes are going to be, right at that $10-11 mark. Kind of pricey. So what's the benefit of this? Well, as you can see, the animal has to stick its hand in that hole, and there's very few critters that are actually want to put their hand in a small hole like that, and B, they can't actually get their hand in there. So a dog, their paws are big. They're not getting it in there, and they're definitely not going to grab a trigger and actually manipulate it. I've seen guys and heard of guys, I've seen a picture once of a guy who caught a cat in one once. And I guess that makes sense. We do bait them with cat food, but they don't really have a claw, a hand to really grab a hold of that trigger. And I would think that if you had a pulled style trigger, you probably would never catch a cat. Now these Z-Traps you might, pushing down, just food for thought. But it's super rare, and like I said, it's just not something you're gonna do too much of. So that's what I use. I use the dog proofs. I'm basically specifically trapping coons when I'm in urban areas, and that's just that's kind of what I stick to. Now you can use 220s, you can use drowner sets, whatever you want to do. Just realize that whatever critter you catch is going to be dead and right there on display, which kind of leads me to my next part, which is out of sight, out of mind. That's a saying I always used to use in the military. Whenever we were trying to stay away from getting tasked with extra work, you say out of sight, out of mind, out of the way. And so what I mean by that is your trap locations. You might have an urban area where you have maybe an open field in an area, or a spot that's visible from the road. You think about most people, they're not walking around too much anymore. And if you're trapping and your trap is visible from the road, well, then you're gonna, if you catch a critter in that, it's gonna create a burn circle, or it's gonna be laying there dead if it's in a conibear, and you're gonna have that critter like right there in open sight, and that's something even out in the woods, where we have competition. I don't put traps where people can see them, because I've had guys that come up and will shoot the critter thinking that they're doing me a favor or something, I don't know, or they'll steal it and they'll steal the trap, which is rare, but it happens. And I know people who are in areas that with high competition, that's what's going to happen. You got to hide your traps. So where do you do that? Well, you got to look for areas that obviously you have to be on the trails where the animals are moving. Find those places that are in the brush, inside a culvert. If you set a trap on a culvert, if you guys go to Sam Wood Outdoors and watch his full-length coon trapping videos he has on there, he does that. Like, he specifically runs dog proofs on culverts, and when he catches that coon will just hide inside that culvert. And people, there's literally, like, you'll see in his videos, he has like a walking trail that goes by one of the spots he traps, and literally the walking trail is 10 feet away from the culvert, and nobody knows that there's a coon in there because it's hiding inside that culvert for when you get there. So something to think about with that. If you guys are gonna run 220s on like trail sets, you know, tuck them back into the weeds. You know, don't just put them right there at the edge of the road. I know it's handy to be able to drive up or drive by it with your truck, you know, and go, okay, yeah, there's nothing in that trap. You know, get it back there a little ways so that people don't see it. You know, people don't, what people don't know doesn't hurt them. And so, you know, people are going to have a tendency to, you know, they're not going to raise any alarms. So, yeah, so hide that stuff, get it out of the way, you know, and then you won't have to deal with, you know, any angry people or, you know, people messing with your traps. Second point I want to make is for trap security. So it kind of goes into that. So if, say, you've done everything you can, you know, to hide it and have your trap put away, and somebody ultimately may find your trap or find a critter in your trap, and they might try to run off with it. Well, I use these Wolfang earth anchors, and I use this for pretty much everything I do. I run it for coyotes, a lot of coon sets, unless it's a water set, or a drowner, obviously. These things just, when they go into dirt, especially here in the Midwest, and especially in January or December, it turns into basically a concrete anchor. I mean, this thing is not going anywhere. I typically have to use a trap puller or my truck to get these out, and sometimes they'll actually break the cable. I've had that happen too. So they're really good. They hold great. In normal soil, and you know, during coon season, which is usually from November 1st, they come out fairly easy, but I still need a puller. Well, if you have this trap and you stake it with like a piece of rebar, or you wrap it around with a quick tie, you know, cable or a looped cable. If somebody finds this trap, and I'll tell you, like, probably 90% of your trap thieves out there are kids, and you know, it's some kid walking through the woods, and he stumbles on your trap set because he's walking down the trail, and he goes, "Ooh, I want that." And most of those kids out there are not carrying around a trap puller or a pair of cutter, you know, dikes or anything like that. And so what I do is I use these earth anchors, and I found traps before that were set off, and I see footprints around them, and I can see where somebody's been pulling on it. And then they realize they can't get that thing out of the ground without any help, and they usually just pass on by. Now, if they're really dedicated and wanted to risk, you know, sticking around long enough for me to find them, you know, I'm sure that they could get it out, but it just makes it harder. Most of my traps, like this 1.5, I have these quick connects or whatever you call them, you know, that you could just unscrew them and take them off. That's handy because if I get a spot where I pound in an anchor and I want to come back to that spot maybe later on, but I want to remove the trap, maybe clean it, or you know, put something else there, or move on, I can leave that in the ground and take this off, and it's nice. It quickly disconnects. I don't do that in the urban areas because I don't want somebody to come up and take that off and run off with my trap and leave my anchor sitting there. So it's just a little added feature. All I do is I just take the loop and I run it through the end here, and then your Wolfang magically fits through there, and you got yourself a nice loop. It's not the prettiest thing, but like I said, you can't get that off there without cutting it, or you're gonna have to pull the whole anchor out of the ground. Just an added extra security feature that keeps that keeps people from running off with your traps. You know, they're expensive, so we want to hold on to them. So the next thing I want to talk about is dispatch. So, guys, you have to pay attention to your local laws, and you have to know when and where you can use, your .22 or, bring a firearm into. Don't make the mistake of going into a residential area, or within a city jurisdiction with a firearm and shooting a raccoon in the head or something and getting the cops called on you. Getting a charge for, discharging a firearm within a city limits, I'm sure that's probably not something that you want, and it's not attention that you want. So what are your options? Well, you have the option of taking a pellet gun. They make these high-powered pump, .22 caliber, .177 caliber pellet guns. They don't cost too much. You can get them at Walmart, or you can even spend the big money and get you a pellet gun and go out, and you can use that to dispatch your critters just the same as you would with a .22. Make sure those are obviously legal or more legal, and just make sure you look that up and everything. Another option that you can use is you can use a conibear, and you can put it on the end of a pole, and you can actually use that and put that, get your crew and you can smack it over their head. That is a way to dispatch them as well. It's not as easy, kind of cumbersome. You could also use a kill pole or a dispatch pole, with the cable loop on the end of it, and you can dispatch them that way as well. And then also, if you don't have any of that stuff, you can always use a good sturdy bat. You just got to make sure that you do it correctly and ethically, and get them on the back of the head where it separates their vertebrae from their head, and it's just one quick clean swipe. Things like that are also going to keep you out of trouble, and they're going to they're not going to raise suspicion. Somebody's not going to be, if they see you walk down into the creek with a rifle, they're going to think that old boy's probably up to something down there. We should go see what's up, or it might raise some alarm with some folks and some soccer mommies out there that think you're gonna go shoot something up or do something bad. So if you can kind of have something small and inconspicuous, that's a very good idea as well. Another idea that I had too, and this is much more expensive, but they're getting more and more prevalent now, are suppressors. And if you guys have a pistol and you have your permits and your tax stamp and everything, you can actually put a suppressor on the end of a .22 pistol, like a Ruger Mark II or something like that, and that would actually be a really good idea too, because you could keep it in a jacket, go down, dispatch it, maybe put it in a bag or a basket, and and take your critter back up with you. So but yeah, so there's a few considerations just on what kind of how I operate and how I do trapping out in these urban areas. I'll probably show you guys a few places that I actually do trap in urban areas and how I do it and how I do my sets a little bit differently. But I hope you guys take some of this as a little bit of guidance, and a little bit of word to the wise if you guys are thinking about trapping in urban areas. I'll tell you, the coons that are in those areas are just fat, and a lot of them are double XL. They stretch out long on a board, and they are in good shape because they don't have really that hard of a life, like the coons out in the wild, where they've got to really hunt hard. A lot of these coons, they make travels into town, and they take out garbage, and they'll tip over your garbage cans and eat your garbage, and they have a pretty good banquet to kind of hit up. So you hit them in those transition areas between their denning areas and their feeding areas, aka the town. You can really be successful. And I know there's a few spots around where I live that I hit up every single year, and I hit the same trails and the same locations, and I always stack up the fur really fast early season, especially when you start talking about areas that maybe the fields aren't harvested and corn's not taken out. It makes it nice to be able to hit those areas up that are easily accessible from the road. So anyway, But yeah, that's pretty much it on that. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope this helps you guys out a little bit. I'd like to hear some of your comments. You know, what you guys do if you trap around urban areas, and you know, little tricks and trades that you use. And if you guys have something cool, well, I'll definitely try to share it and spread the word with everybody else around here. But yeah. So anyway, everything else is good here. We're getting into it'll be September before you know it, and I'm gonna be getting prepped for trapping season. Super excited. Got some new equipment orders gonna be on the way here soon, and I'll be sharing that. I've got some trapping series that I'm working on right now, and I want to I'm gonna be sharing that with you guys. Hopefully try to get it out either before or right into trapping season. Just some how-to videos on coon trapping, and then some interesting stuff on coyote sets that I want to share with you guys. So anyway, I'm gonna get out of here. As always, I'm Brandon Storrell with Pebble Creek Outdoors, and thanks for watching.